Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
I'm your co-host, David.
And we are back. We've been kind of having a weird one lately. We haven't been as consistent.
Yeah.
There was some illnesses. Everybody in LA had COVID.
Was that COVID?
I am pretty sure it was COVID.
It was. I was sneezing. I don't think you were supposed to.
I think you get every symptom with COVID. I think everything's COVID. I'm pretty sure it's all COVID.
I tested for COVID. I definitely had one of the worst flus I've ever had.
Did you test with the over-the-counter antigen test, though? Because those things haven't worked since, 2021. They don't do any of the variants.
I went to the kiosk by my house.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It was, but I was just like, this is a flu. This is the worst flu that's ever existed. I hate myself. And I spent a long time in bed reading Borges.
Interesting. Well, okay, we're back. And I think we're going to do more consistent recording. We keep saying that, but I think we're really going to now. We've locked in a schedule. See, what actually happened, besides everybody getting sick, which is definitely COVID. I think you had.
Yeah. Okay, I had the flu. Everyone got the flu.
No, they did not. Because one of my friends who got sick was like, I can't smell anything. Is that normal? And I'm like, yeah, if you have COVID. See, you need the tests that are like the equivalent of the PCR tests. They're like the 100% accuracy almost tests. They're not over-the-counter antigen tests. They're the metrics tests. You have to have the device. It's you're a little scientist when you do them. Those are the tests how you know if you have COVID.
Okay, well.
They're really expensive, though. They're like $25 each. Anyway, so on top of that, what happened is I'm switching commie groups.
Oh, that's right.
But I'm not saying who.
Again?
No. This is the first switch. But all the meetings are on Sundays, which was always podcast day. So it's been really hard for me to rework my schedule, taking this into account. And I finally just figured it out. So that's why since the beginning of the year, it's been a little more inconsistent because I haven't been able to handle commie meetings and podcast with the weekend. I'm like, but David and I just worked out a new schedule.
We did.
Yes. I mean, I'm going to do research on Fridays.
Yeah.
We're going to record every Sunday night.
And I think we'll switch off on
researching, which helps. And then we'll be able to, we do have to do more consistently our Patreon episodes.
Yeah. We should do one this week.
We should do one this week. Maybe every Tuesday night we record Patreon episodes.
Why don't we just argue about something?
Yeah, people liked it when we argued.
Okay, well.
Yeah, we got into a fight over on the Patreon and people seem to enjoy it. So maybe we'll just do that. We'll just do scheduled, unresearched impromptu debates.
I hate debating.
Yeah, it's not great. I hate it as a concept too, but I think because we don't hate each other and our opinions are 99% the same, it's not going to be too bad. I structure it and there'll be no timers.
I just don't fight. Okay.
Okay, we'll fight. What's the difference between a fight and a debate?
That's more fun. Speaking of fighting, I told you, you were like, don't talk about that.
No, you can talk about it. It's fine.
Why the fuck are you on the internet?
A good question, David.
Why the fuck? Well, okay, first of all, why the fuck are you on the internet talking? I think at this point, I'm just going to say you have probably thought more about Casey Anthony in the last 2 weeks. Month.
No, you don't even know the irony. If you're not keeping up with the reasons Madeline's getting canceled this week.
Okay, you're not getting I
endless
refuse
stream of cancellation.
I refuse to accede to the premise that people with quirky glasses on the internet yelling at you constitutes canceling.
Okay, well, tell them that. So basically what happened is last year I had a thread of tweets about true crime and how horrible true crime was for people and how I felt so vindicated that everybody was starting to come around and realize how bad true crime was, how bad it was for people. And I gave a few examples and I'm like, yeah, one of the biggest things is that nobody stops to think well, what if we got it wrong? And basically the premise that I came up with is we are not equipped as a society. We don't have all the information to solve the problems. We don't need to have opinions about this. We especially don't need to have strong opinions that people murdered somebody if we do not know, because you never stop to consider what if I got it wrong? And Casey Anthony was one person in the thread that I mentioned, but the main person I mentioned in the thread was a different woman who had been accused of murdering her child. There's also the cases of Lindy Chamberlain, who was the dingo ate my baby woman.
Yep. Yes.
In Australia or New Zealand? Australia.
Australia.
In 1980, her baby went missing, and she told everybody a dingo came and stole my baby and ate it. And everyone's like, that's the most ridiculous story we've ever heard. And she was weird. She was a weird woman. And everyone was like, this woman is like a psychopath, baby murdering weirdo. And she actually got convicted and sent to prison. And it wasn't until 2012 that they found skeletal remains in a cave, and they did DNA testing, and it was her baby, and her baby had literally been eaten by a dingo. And she was absolved in 2012. So basically, it was just this random thread from last May, like a year ago, where I was like, yeah, true crime. And we have a tendency to, first of all, vilify women, especially young women, especially like young mothers. Like the way the police state is wielded against men, like CPS and like unfit mother claims are often wielded against women, especially women of color. And one of the things I've said about Casey Anthony too is like, okay, she got away. She got off. Like she got away.
I love that you have to stop yourself where you're like, okay, she got away with it. Oh,
I don't know. But she got away from like the carceral system is the point. And like, I don't know if she killed her kid or not. I have no way of knowing that. And all these people who are like, we definitely know. When I've asked them, I'm like, why do you think that? They repeat the evidence back wrong. Like, they don't even understand. And that doesn't even get into faulty forensic science and how forensic science isn't usually real science unless it's like DNA and it's wielded by the police state. Like, we've done actually an episode about forensic science on here if you guys want to listen to it. Anyway, the whole point is that she got away from the system, but like, if she had been a black or a brown mom, I don't think she would have. Because like CPS and the police state, the way it's weaponized against like especially mothers of color is so much more intense. And it's like we as a society just need to like get away from this idea that like, one, we're vilifying every woman who doesn't perform like perfect to the patriarchal expectation of femininity, and like, two, that we're all mini cops on the case who know everything and we're gonna solve the crime, because it's like you don't know what you're talking about, to be perfectly frank. And like, three, that we have this weird trust in our carceral system for things like forensic science, it's real science. And it's like, it's not. Actually, cops made it up, most of it. And it's usually their weird buddy who knew he could get like government contract money if he invented something like blood spatter analysis, which isn't real.
Okay, so I have a few things. First of all, an ex-girlfriend of mine used to use true crime podcasts to fall asleep, which was horrible for me, because I would like get really invested.
Oh, so you have a lot of experience with true crime.
Well,
I listen to some podcasts as well.
I would she would be like, oh my God, the sound of this voice is so soothing, I don't even pay attention to what's being said, and I just go to sleep. And then it would be like, on Wednesday, a man tortured and murdered 5 people in a town in New Zealand. And I would be like,
yeah, how do you sleep to that?
Okay, I guess I'm locked in for 2.5 hours of learning about this fucking thing. And so I would just like wake up tired. It would also autoplay, so I just wouldn't sleep, and I would just get out of bed being like, I know a lot about a lot of people who died.
Yeah, but here's the thing, you probably don't even know a lot about.
Yeah, well, okay, this is
like a narrative. These are like sensationalized news stories. Anyway, so I tweeted this whole multi-tweet thread a year ago, and there's a subreddit dedicated to trying to cancel me.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's a few. And somebody found one of the one about Casey Anthony and took it out of context completely, and then made all these TikTok videos about it, and that is why TikTok tried to cancel me for Casey Anthony. And I'm like, my whole opinion is we do not have enough information, and those of you who think you do have enough information, when you tell me things, I'm like, I factually know that's not correct. So if I know it's not correct, and here's all the data and evidence that that's not correct, why do you feel like you know enough to have an opinion when you know less than me, and I don't think I know enough to have an opinion?
Here's what I will say. If you, first of all, if you are spending your time on the internet tracking down you Madeline Hansons,
it's embarrassing.
That's fucking embarrassing.
That's embarrassing.
It's almost as embarrassing as being like, I'm being canceled.
I mean, I will say it actually makes me really, really sad for people, because like imagine someone you know, you're like, what'd you do last night? And you're like, oh, I spent a long time on a subreddit about trying to cancel a TikToker. In what world are you not concerned about that person?
I mean, a really good night for, first of all, so this is, if you're a true crime person, the solution to the same, it's if you're going to yell at a TikTok person on the internet, or if you're going to get hyper fixated on, true crime bullshit.
Yeah.
May I recommend Law and Order? You can look at Elliot Stabler's butt. I know a lot of people fucking like Elliot Stabler's butt.
You can watch a fake crime story and speculate all you want about who you think did it.
There's a really fucking spectacular episode with Isabelle Hubert.
I don't know. Who that is.
She's the woman from the piano teacher.
Oh,
That lady.
yeah.
And it's wild. It's fucking sick. Also, I want to say that Hilary Duff is in one.
Oh, the cameos alone.
The cameos are
If you're
spectacular.
gonna do it, you might as well do fake propaganda and not be real propaganda IRL out in the world.
And
Kill the cop in your head. ACAB. ACAB includes true crime addiction.
and
And I say that as somebody who used to actually listen to true crime. And to this day, I maintain if you are going to listen to true crime, I think the most ethical true crime podcast out there is one called Crime Junkie, because they only do cases that the families solicit them. And it's usually people who have been forgotten by the justice system. It's usually like missing Indigenous women in Canada or the United States, for example. And they work with the families to try to bring awareness to the cases to get them reopened.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm gonna say, I don't really give a shit what media people consume.
Just don't get so invested in it. Like, you know
Like,
what's
just
going
don't
on.
be fucking weird.
Don't be weird about it. Don't
Like-
be weird little weird cop. That's weird.
I love propaganda. It is
Procedural's fun.
maybe my good X-Files episode.
My favorite movie? Face Off.
Sure.
Pure propaganda.
I do remember when members of the LAPD and LA Sheriff's Department switched faces. That was
That's so real. Also, Con Air.
great fucking movie.
Propaganda mentions Fresno.
Yeah.
A guy they push out of an airplane and he lands in Fresno.
And he's like, "Ah, fuck, I'm in Fresno."
They're like, Fresno PD here. We got a body from the sky. That's how people talk in Fresno.
Fair enough.
Okay, all right. So recap is Madeline got canceled for old, not very hot takes,
Stop
form takes
saying.
about Casey Anthony. There is a subreddit dedicated to hating me. It is deranged. And Face Off and Con Air are both great films.
Also,
Kill the Cop in Your Head includes true crime.
also Elliot Stabler's butt.
Also, Elliot Stabler's butt. And we're going to be more consistent now because I figured out a schedule for my commie.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the intro stuff.
So now we are going to talk. What are we talking about?
Today, we are talking about AFRICOM.
Which you pitched to me like a month and a half ago.
And then I started the research, and then life fell apart, but then I finished it, and we're back. So, do you know about AFRICOM? What do you know about AFRICOM?
I know nothing. I made the basic inference that it's like Madeline, and it's in Africa. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Which means that it is some kind of intelligence ass fucking intervention into Africa.
So close. State Department, military side. Not
I'm gonna call that
military
within
side.
the larger umbrella of intelligence ass things.
Okay, it's not the secret espionage side of things. It's the Bang Bang Dead Now side of things.
I'm going to say, who was Alan Dulles' brother?
Who was Alan Dulles' brother?
John Foster Dulles at the State Department.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow, you're so good with names.
that's about the only thing.
That's pretty good, though. Yeah, so AFRICOM is short for the United States Africa Command, and it is part of the Defense Department. So, the Defense Department of the United States has 11 different things that they call Unified Combatant Commands under something called the Unified Command Plan. Again, they're not sending their poets. Yeah. So basically what they do is they just have the Defense Department as like the umbrella. And then they have these organizations under the Defense Department that target different regions or strategies around the planet that the military is trying to target or work on.
So at some point they all got together around a big old desk and they were like, let's divide up Africa.
Yeah. What could go wrong?
No, this is a callback.
Yes, it is.
To what, the Berlin Conference?
Mhm.
Is that where it was in Berlin?
Yeah, decisions to carve up Africa.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what it is, except the United States was like, let's carve up the world and make Africa one place. So, they have their own. Okay, if you go on the Defense Department website, which I recommend, it's a trip. If you look at the different sections for the Unified Combatant Commands, they all have their own icons, but all of the icons look like they were made in Microsoft Paint in 1998 by a middle schooler. but these are like the official emblems for all these organizations. I highly recommend you guys just like Google United States Africa Command, and you'll see like the little emblem that shows up, and you're like, there's no way that's the official emblem. It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And it is a good time. So I really think you guys should go check that out. So, but yeah, if you go on the Defense Department, they're like, here's our 11
Wait,
different...
what's the...
Do you want to see it?
Show me.
Okay. Nobody will be able to look at it except for us. United States Africa Command. All right. This is it. Okay. Do you see the artwork on this? It's very vaginal, so I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's like vagina is opening up to reveal Africa.
It is, but also like it was made in Microsoft Paint in 1998. Like it does not.
So
like,
you're...
look at these military guys standing in front of it. Like
I
it's
mean,
actually an emblem.
This is, I will say, they gotta get on like the drug enforcement whatever thing, because they have like the
DEA?
Yeah, like the best fucking...
Is it this?
No, but they have like the best fucking like enforcement patches. Like I have one that's for club drugs. So sick. That's like a skeleton at a rave.
What? Okay, I'm looking this up. Skeleton rave patch DEA. The oddly beautiful and sometimes disturbing artistic talent. Oh my god. Of the nation's drug cops. Whoa. Okay, this is going on our Patreon right now. If you're on our Patreon, I'm posting a link to this. It is so good.
I will say, if you're trying to buy one, they're very easy to buy. Okay. But they're huge. Like I don't know where to put it. It's like 4 inches. Like I can't put that on like a jacket.
You could if you're not afraid.
That's the one.
I gotta get the person I'm dating one of these. Oh, this is so good. Wow. Oh, yeah, this is cool. Wow. Okay, guys, I'm linking on our Patreon to the Washington Post did an article about it. Very weird. Okay. Link. So that's that.
Okay. So they need to take some pointers from the DEA.
It is the opposite of the DEA's patches. Theirs look great. The AFRICOM one, horrible. Oh my god, why won't it let me do it? Definitely not great. Sorry, it didn't post and I have to do it again. Okay. Is it going?
Okay, we can figure that out.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So the artistically deficient.
Yes, artistically deficient Defense Department Unified Combatant Command groups. Right. So there are 11 total ones. And like I said, some of them are regions, but some of them are strategies. So the non-regional, more strategy-based ones are Transportation Command, Strategic Command, Special Operations Command, and Cyber Command.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then the regional ones would be Southern Command, Northern Command, Indo-Pacific Command, European Command, Central Command, Space Command.
That sounds sick.
Yeah, that's just outer space. And then Africa Command, AFRICOM, which is what we're talking about today. So it's important to remember these regional ones are basically just designated combat zones.
Okay, and so essentially, I'm just going to hazard a prediction.
Yes.
We're sending small little special forces type units all over fucking Africa who sometimes get involved in like bizarre internecine feuds with one another and like murder each other over drug deals.
Okay, I haven't heard anything about drug deals yet, but I'm confident that's probably going on. What we're really definitely doing is sending small kind of military groups into Africa and replicating kind of the School of the Americas WINSEC model, if you listen to our episode about that, where we train local military people on how to be just like ruthless American-style combatants, which includes usually a lot of torture, a lot of violence, a lot of mass intimidation, a lot of massacres, things of that nature. And then we kind of pit them against each other to try to stage coups and overthrow people who are less sympathetic to American interests and install instead people who are more sympathetic to American interests to try to keep oil and other natural resources like cobalt and diamonds flowing to American companies.
You gotta wonder why we don't just like maybe like make like some roads, maybe put a belt on those roads. That seems it seems effective. People seem to like it.
We're gonna talk about China, definitely. That is a reference to China's Belt and Road program. initiative, and we will mention that. You know, the motives for the United States being in Africa, obviously not great.
Control natural resources and make sure that those natural resources flow towards us.
Exactly. Yeah. And in the pursuit of that, we will endorse all sorts of just downright evil shit.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And we'll even orchestrate evil shit. So, AFRICOM is just the name of the organization that handles armed conflict in Africa, and it was not founded until 2008. And we'll talk about why in a little bit. But it has its own command bases, equipments, troop, planning departments, and its headquarters are actually in Germany, which is interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very, very fascinating. Now, you know, the reason why the United States has divided the whole world up into combat zones with active ongoing military initiatives is, like David mentioned, it's just to do neocolonialism and neoliberalism, like neoliberal expansion. So, like, David, why don't you give us, like, a quick recap for anybody who's not up to date on all the terms or up to speed on all the terms? Like, what is neocolonialism?
Neocolonialism is the structure of dependence, usually orchestrated by various financial institutions at the behest of first world nations, usually the United States, but, you know, some other people get in there, to extract resources, and also labor is something that I honestly think we should talk about guest worker programs. That would be good. From formerly colonized countries. That seems, it's basic. It's we can't, like, put a flag down anymore, though often we do. Right.
Yeah, it's true, we do. Guantanamo Bay is in Cuba.
The military bases throughout Southeast Asia, or for that matter, fucking Greenland.
Yep.
Like, are, like, good evidence of this, or the fact that we have military bases in, you know, fucking Germany.
Exactly.
Yeah, should I do?
No, I think you're good. So how would you define neoliberalism?
Sort of conceptually, or like Milton Friedman ass thing. So like the theory. Well, I mean, you gotta.
Okay, no, I'll do it.
No, okay, no.
Summarize neoliberalism.
The theory is like liberalism, but like more.
So, but what is classic liberalism? Is
it's a free market ass fucking economy.
Yes. So neoliberalism is just like this idea that we take classic liberalism, which is like an economic and political model that revolves around this idea of freedom, quote unquote. We're talking about free markets, but we're also talking about individual liberties, like your ability to engage in the free market usually, and sometimes some civil liberties come along with that, like your freedom to like speech or like journalistic expression or whatever. But it's pretty limited because all of these things only are freedoms insofar as they do not threaten your ability to participate in a free market, which means they can't actually challenge capitalism. So that's like liberalism as a concept. And neoliberalism is like, let's pump this thing up on steroids. Let's deregulate everything. Let's get way more businesses in here doing everything so the government does as little as possible. Let's make money, baby.
And the problem is that a lot of countries, especially in the formerly colonized world, are like, well, fuck. We've been fucked in like various ways for usually hundreds of years. We should do something to not have all of our resources extracted from our country, be it oil or minerals or whatever.
Yes.
And in practice, neoliberalism is the like, we're going to play world cop to anyone who tries to like unfuck their country.
Exactly. So what ends up happening is you have these countries where they had been formerly colonized. The United States, maybe European countries had come in and be like, hey, nice country you've got there. We're going to enslave you all and we're going to steal all of your natural resources to send back home. And then that became really not fashionable.
Okay, let's be clear here. It's not just the United, like England, like
Europe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
France, Spain, Portugal, like all these places did this. The Western white countries did this. So basically, when it fell out of fashion to do that, basically, like, it started with Haiti when they were like, oh my God, we can't just enslave people and make them do our bidding. They revolt sometimes.
And yeah.
And it became obvious that all of these colonial powers, these like European American colonial powers, were going to lose their grasp on this. They were like, okay, we have to switch to a different model. We can't outright own people and countries anymore. So instead, what we are going to do is, like David talked about earlier, we are going to do neocolonialism, where we're going to be like, wow, your country's really destroyed, from us being there and destroying it, whatever. we can give you loans and we can give you access to money, but only if you engage in neoliberal economic policies that benefit our companies.
And if you decide not to take that money and to chart some sort of third course,
right, which we will talk about, decide not to play ball with us, we will kill your leader in a fake coup that we orchestrated, and we'll put in our guy to lead your country instead. And guess what? Now everything's wide open for American business. And that's the American model abroad.
Yep.
Yeah, so in a nutshell. So that's really our motive for being in all of these countries. That's why the United States seems like it's in permanent warfare with the rest of the world. It's not because we're defending freedom or democracy. It's because we want everything to be a free market for us to be able to exploit. And that's what you really have to think about when you think about like freedom and democracy. Like that, those are buzzwords for that process, basically. So as you might imagine, a lot of Black communists in the United States, in particular other forms of like Black socialists, are watching our government up their game in Africa, up their military involvement in Africa under AFRICOM's programs for the past 2 decades, and they are concerned. They are raising the red flag about this. So there are a few organizations who have been trying to do a lot of work to bring awareness to AFRICOM and what it's up to. And a lot of this episode is just going to be me sharing their work.
Okay. So who are the organizations?
Well, the first one we're going to talk about is the Hood Communist Collective.
Okay.
And they do some really great reporting on this. And one of the things they've said is the purpose of AFRICOM is to use U.S. military power to impose U.S. control of African land, resources, and labor to service the needs of U.S. multinational corporations and the wealthy in the United States, which is exactly what we were just talking about. So they report that today there are 46 various forms of U.S. bases in Africa, as well as military-to-military relations between 53 out of the 54 African countries and the United States, and that U.S. Special Forces troops now operate in more than a dozen African nations. And of course, yeah, they're not the only Black left-wing political organization upset with AFRICOM. There's actually a hashtag that picked up steam in 2022, which is hashtag #ShutDownAfricom, that was orchestrated by a lot of these organizations working together. So one of the great things I think about being a Marxist, right, is it's a liberation ideology for the most oppressed people worldwide. And that means that we have no shortage of opinions from Marxists and other people with left-wing political ideologies, obviously, who are more directly impacted by U.S. foreign policy in Africa. So a lot of these organizations do include Black Americans, obviously, but also Pan-Africanists, people living in Africa today, people from the African diaspora who are forced to leave because their families felt unsafe in these conflicts the United States facilitated there. And we have a lot of groups that are made up of usually some amalgamation of these types of people with a personal vested interest in what's going on. So there's Pan-Africans for Liberation and Solidarity. They say the reality is there has long been transnational interest in Africa's natural resources. AFRICOM is ushering in another scramble for Africa. And in the case of Somalia, the oil corporations of Europe, the US, and Canada are engaged in the search for petroleum. Somalia's coastline is on the Indian Ocean and is an access point to the Arabian Peninsula and the Gulf of Aden, at the mouth of the Red Sea, both areas being significant geopolitically for control of shipping lanes as it relates to energy resources and the military. And we will talk a little bit about Somalia in this episode as well in more detail. Then there's the Black Alliance for Peace, and they say, globally, the African working class is locked in mortal combat against the forces of neoliberal capitalism, which is concentrated in the geostrategic interests of the U.S. ruling classes. To preserve these interests, the U.S. is involved in an aggressive military reconquest of Africa through its United States Africa Command, AFRICOM, formed in 2008 with the goal of imposing an enhanced U.S. influence throughout the African continent. AFRICOM has made African nations vassal states following the dictates of U.S. foreign policies, which are antithetical to the needs of African people. They also said Western domination of Africa's wealth by military force hurts Africa, but it also hurts African people in the U.S. Although many harbor stale beliefs that the people of Africa care nothing about their stolen African family members in the United States, the contrary was proven dramatically by Africa's outpouring of support and solidarity in the aftermath of the George Floyd murder. Imagine the changes that would have occurred if those demonstrations of support had been accompanied by financial support to the movement, diplomatic arm twisting, and economic pressure. Africa cannot demonstrate that type of independence and power because the entire continent has a giant U.S. military boot on its neck. It falls to those of us who are close up and personal with AFRICOM to untie the laces of that boot and cause the U.S. military operations in Africa to trip and crash. So I liked that because that's an interesting perspective about why so many Black Americans are deeply concerned about what AFRICOM is doing. Obviously, every American should be concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, right, like, you made reference, or the quote makes reference to the stale belief that Africans don't care about diaspora Black communities, right? It does seem a part of like a longer, mostly Marxist tradition of Pan-Africanism, though one that as you and I know from, I think we've recommended Cedric Robinson here,
Yes.
tends to dispense with Marxism, or at least some of the larger Marxist organizations, in favor of a Pan-Africanist nationalist perspective at various points.
Yeah, but I think there is definitely a Marxist tradition of Pan-Africanism that fits it together, and it has to do a lot with the Marxist idea of self-determination for marginalized and oppressed people.
And it's also, right, I believe in our Haiti episode, I made reference to George Padmore, or one of the founding members of the Pan-Africanist League, who left the Communist Party over the Stalinist reorient. I know you don't like the term Stalinist.
I don't like the term Stalin.
But like the Stalin era, how do we reorientation away from supporting liberation struggles in the third world, or specifically in Africa?
Yeah.
And it was specifically over capitulation in Ethiopia, where there was like a huge this is off topic. Is this?
Yeah, no, this is fine.
Ethiopia was like an extremely bizarre case in the sense that it was the only country to fully resist European colonization. However, Haile Selassie, the leader of Ethiopia at the time, was basically like a feudal lord. Right. So it was this thing where a lot of Pan-Africanists were like, when they saw Italy trying to get in there, were like, fuck that. We have to go defend Ethiopia. I know that Amy Césaire tried to join the military, as did George Padmore and CLR James. Apparently CLR James, like, couldn't for some, like, weird regulatory reason to do with his, like, Jamaican citizenship.
Oh, interesting.
But they were also like, we got to kind of liberate Ethiopia both from Italy, and also like this Haile Selassie like feudalism thing, probably like not cool.
Right.
But there was like a huge migration of Pan-Africanists out of the Comintern in the 30s and 40s over the real or perceived lack of movement of the Comintern on Africa.
Right. So I think it's important to note, if you're not super familiar with Marxism, there is an idea that Lenin introduced to Marxist theory, which is the right to self-determination for oppressed people. And the idea is just that, like, look, nations exist of different people who sometimes are bound together specifically because of their marginalization. Sometimes they already exist and then they are kind of dominated by an oppressed nation. Actually, in the Communist Party early on, there was an argument made that in the United States, there already exists a Black nation. Geographically in the South, still like over 56, I think, % of Black Americans live in the South. It's its own cultural experience. Like, it is a nation already existing.
When was this argument made? Was this made before like the Great Migration in like the 30s and 40s?
This argument was made around the 30s.
Okay, so
maybe, yeah. So around the same time. But I think even though obviously people have spread since then, it does still stand, and that is like a Marxist concept of the self-determination of kind of oppressed people. So this idea of creating kind of a federation of like aligned people with their own national identities, not necessarily like ethno-states, obviously, but just like their own cultural practices and traditions, but operating under one federation together, that itself is not necessarily at odds with Marxist theory. Like, that's kind of what the USSR was, right? And so the idea of self-determination for all these different ethnic groups, like, the USSR is comprised of, like, I don't know, like between 100 and 200 different ethnic groups. China is comprised of multiple different ethnic groups. So this kind of idea of Pan-Africanism, even though these are different ethnic groups in Africa, and Africa is a massive continent, you will meet a lot of Marxists who are also Pan-Africanists. And these ideas are not necessarily mutually exclusive, although every Pan-Africanist is not a Marxist.
I will say also, I gotta push back on.
I mean, this is just a fact about Marxism.
No. I mean, the nationalism thing, or like So, right, like, you got to be careful when you say nation, right?
Right, it's not a
Like,
nation state as we think of it today. It's the idea of
because
a nation, like a nationality, or like a like the actual definition of like a nation, right? It's like you're bound by like culture, language, maybe economy.
I think this is Raymond Williams' gloss on Benedict Anderson, so I think it's in Marxism and Literature, but he says it's like a bank, a library, and a currency.
Okay, so that's different than the definitions that are used in the Marxist.
No, those are straight up because like that comes out of Benedict Anderson, a Marxist, right? Like trying to analyze how nationalism came to be.
Nationalism and the idea of a like you're using nationalism is not the same as like a nation exists.
But like, right, like national, this is okay, fine, we'll have a
like, because like Black Americans in the South who were like sharecroppers, for example, who didn't have access to power, they didn't have their own bank. In fact, the United States tried to set up a bank for Black Americans and told them all to put their money in it, and then it went bankrupt and everybody lost their money. So it's like they didn't have their own bank, they didn't have their own post office. For a long time they didn't even have schools. They were still a nation though. They shared cultural and most interesting, because they were stripped of their like cultural background from Africa, and so many people lost track of their like lineage and roots, they formed their own cultural experience, a lot of people bound together. So like the argument that was made by this person who was part of the original Communist Party, who was a Black communist, Black Marxist, that this constituted a nation that was experiencing oppression. They were that like Black Americans are an oppressed nation that exists within like an oppressive nation.
So that is,
so it's not a nation state. It's not the same as being a nationalist, but this is like what we talk about when we talk about the right to self-determination for oppressed people. Like you can exist as your own like national identity or a nation, and you should have the right to decide for yourself like what you want to happen and how you want things to be handled and perceived. So this idea of like a federation of different nations in that sense of the word, who have their own cultural experiences and backgrounds and identities, but coming together, that is something that a lot of Marxists who are Pan-Africanists are like, yeah, this totally makes sense, because Africa is so many different ethnic groups, nationalities, like different nations exist within it. But Pan-Africanism doesn't mean we homogenize that. It means we come together as a federation, like working together. And in that, we have power to push back against our oppressors, which are the colonizing powers.
Fair enough. I like, right, that's whatever. Like that's, I guess the Williams gloss on the Anderson. So let's just say the Anderson thing, and I think it's not. Maybe it's not a library; it's a newspaper, right? Like comes out of the idea that the nation as the identification of people as like a sort of like imagined community, somewhat famously the title of the fucking book, right? With the state, comes out of the experience of sort of like what you could think of as colonists, right? Like settler colonial realities. That it comes out of the idea that there are a bunch of people who like move to a fucking place, not who are kidnapped to that place.
Right.
Right. So American colonists and like the like, you know, Americas, and they start to identify as like Brazilian or American or whatever because they have a shared identity that it then comes to develop with, and like the currency, the newspaper, the library, those become synecdoches for like a broader cultural understanding of themselves that then becomes identified with the state. So that is like an argument for how the concept of the nation as like the identification of these like cultural bound things with the state developed.
With the state, yes. But that doesn't mean that people don't exist within like a Marxist idea of a nation already and don't have access to those things, or are systematically stripped of those things. Like literacy rates for oppressed quote unquote nations within frameworks that literally later became Marxist, literacy rates would be lower for the people who are most oppressed, right? So it's like they didn't have newspaper access. Many times they legally were not allowed to have newspaper access, but they're still a nation and a culture.
This seems like like if I'm correct, you're pulling this mostly from Lenin.
Yeah, this is Lenin. This is Lenin's thing about self-determination, but also this is like just the kind of the reality of how Marxism and Pan-Africanism interact, and how you will meet a lot of Marxists who are Pan-Africanists, and not all Pan-Africanists are Marxists, though, but Pan-Africanism is not incompatible with a Marxist framework. So a lot of the people that I'm going to be referencing as we talk about this are Pan-Africanist Marxists.
Fair enough. I don't know, I'm just going to say that if I understand correctly, Marx did not write extensively about, other than, the Communist Manifesto line of each country or each nation's proletariat.
The national question about Ireland, Marx wrote extensively
I mean, he wrote extensively about that.
And his opinion about Ireland actually changed.
I mean, and it also changed his opinion about colonialism but my point being, Marx's comments about nations are scattered somewhat.
The national question, I think, is the piece that most clearly defines how he is engaging with the idea of a nation in Marxist theory.
This is
because it's about Ireland.
The one on Ireland. Yeah, no, and fair enough. And one of the things, and I and I'm going to do a fun segue here back to AFRICOM.
Okay.
That's going to be really fucking great.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So, he points out, in that, which I believe I quoted when we did Ireland, was the thing about how one of the reasons that it was in the interests of the English bourgeoisie or the English proletariat to resist the colonization in Ireland was that it was creating a bourgeois proletariat because the proletariat was able to share, albeit modestly, in the spoils of colonialism in Ireland.
Yes.
Right. Which is a good... Here's the transition.
Okay. I'm ready.
If you happen to be an American person...
You should care about what we do in Africa.
Because it will spoil your class consciousness if you don't care about it.
Yes, completely. We're back to Africa. Okay, so the Black Alliance for Peace also said AFRICOM and the entire command structure allowed the U.S. to attempt to keep as much of the world as possible under its hegemony. It increases the military budget, which now comprises 60% of all discretionary spending, and deprives people in this country of public funds that would improve the quality of their lives. AFRICOM also reduces democracy and the sovereignty of African people on the continent and deprives them of the right to direct their governments as they see fit. So there's also a Pan-Africanist named Nefta Freeman who talks about AFRICOM a lot and does a lot of reporting on AFRICOM. And Nefta Freeman maintains white supremacists, neo-colonial hegemony over the Black motherland is what AFRICOM is up to. And also says the persistence of the civil disobedience against racist police terror in the United States is admirable. That the U.S., however, can at the same time expand a murderous predator drone war in Africa without a, denunciation of any kind shows a collective disconnect in the understanding of the essential problem. The absence of a domestic backlash against U.S. Africa policy is testament to the blind spots of our movement. How can the U.S., whose wealth and power is based on economic exploitation and repression of the indigenous and Black working class, gain tacit permission to police our motherland? Imagine another country conducting 46 airstrikes on the U.S. in 8 months, as the United States has done against Somalia. So a lot of, Black Marxists in the United States or Black Pan-Africanists in the United States are talking about why specifically this is an issue we as Americans need to care about. The All African People's Revolutionary Party says the U.S. and NATO continues destroying secular states in Africa and around the world, like Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Iran before the Shah, and Afghanistan before the Taliban. In concert with right-wing fascists hiding behind Islam, they are aligned with feudal empires, the Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Bahrain.
Okay, so I'm going to sum this up.
Yeah.
In Somalia specifically, what is at issue is shipping lanes.
Yes.
In the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
And the oil. Which means that the oil-rich, sort of like UNICEF-type countries, have an interest in allying with the United States in promoting a neo-colonialist framework in Africa.
Yes.
Am I correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And we also have Tunde Osazua, who's a reporter at the Hood Communist, which we referenced earlier, who specifically says AFRICOM's operations in Africa over the last decade, including hundreds of drone strikes, billions of dollars in aid and development projects, air quotes around those, and countless massive military exercises correlate with a 500% spike in incidents of violence attributed to Islamist terrorist organizations. Part of AFRICOM's stated mission is to promote regional security, stability, and prosperity, but its very nature precludes the development of any of these conditions and really brings about destabilization and the furthering of U.S. interests on the continent. So what's really interesting here is, like, we're talking about, like, the Islam thing. We're talking about the Islamist terrorist organizations. You're like, what does this have to do with Africa? Well, one of the main things is that we see the United States is really good at pissing people off. Like, when we think about, Osama bin Laden, he went through a U.S.-backed militant training camp. That guy was trained by us. Like, we funded him, we trained, we gave him weapons, we did all of this stuff. And the United States just doesn't know when to stop pushing buttons. We push so many buttons, we act entitled to the world. There's an obvious expected backlash that comes from that, where people are like, you know what? Fuck you then. We're going so far the opposite direction away from you guys. Like,
so it's also, I believe it's a Washington Post report from the Libya of
yes,
it all.
Which we'll get into.
That when what's his name? I have to on memory hole some your right wing uncle ass shit.
Okay.
Here, Brett fucking Stevens.
Who's that?
Of Benghazi fame.
Oh.
Seems to have been involved in arming quote-unquote moderate groups in Syria from Libya.
Yes.
That turned out to just be ISIS.
Yeah, and we talk about ISIS a lot. There actually is some, like, the United States is involved in trying to quote-unquote fight ISIS in different countries in Africa, but it really is just, basically what we see is that if the United States claims that ISIS is anywhere, just like we used to claim that Al-Qaeda was somewhere or the Taliban is somewhere, it kind of gives us carte blanche to just go blow up the whole country with the American population. We're just like, no, we have to bomb them, guys. It's ISIS. ISIS is the big bad. And it's like, you're not going to meet people who are like, ISIS isn't the big bad. No, I think we all can agree, like, extremist terrorist organizations do exist and are not great. But when you look at, for example, China's response to that, when there was heavy recruiting going on by ISIS in China, they were like, whoa, okay, how do we address this? They basically did transformative justice approaches to dealing with ISIS. The United States is like, how can we use this to our advantage? We'll just claim that anywhere we want to explode and steal oil from has ISIS hiding there.
And sometimes we'll arm actual ISIS.
And sometimes we'll actually arm ISIS to go in and be those places to fight the people who are getting in the way of us stealing the oil.
And then we'll be like, whoa, there's a big ISIS problem.
Now we gotta go blow them up. Yeah, and it's like, we created the problem. We're creating all the problems. We're orchestrating all the problems. So I think it's important when we point that out. It's not like when people are like hiding behind Islam, it's like, it's not like Islam's the problem. Absolutely not. The United States government is the problem.
It's I think it's like hiding behind a peculiar internet poisoned a perversion of Islam.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know.
It's not, and I will say, it when you learn about the histories of these groups and you see what they're really mad at, very often the religious extremism is just like the conduit to carry a frustration with U.S. foreign policy.
I'm just gonna say,
and I'm like, I'm not defending that, but it's like how can you say that these people are not justified in being angry at U.S. foreign policy at the very least? I'm gonna pick up on the internet poisoned aspect for 1 second. If you happen to be a particular internet poisoned person who spends their time on message boards yelling at someone online, you're basically ISIS. Whoa. Okay. Hot take coming in from David. I don't know about that one, but
sorry.
Yeah, no. But I mean, honestly, one of the most succinct explanations of this phenomenon came from the lead singer of System of a Down on September 12th, 2001. He posted this whole thing on the System of a Down website that was like, hey, okay, yeah, September 11th, great tragedy. Here's what the United States did that led to this happening. And it was a really, really good breakdown. And it's like, you see these things anytime you look at these kinds of destabilizations and extremist groups in a region operating, the United States always had our hands in it. We always caused it. We always prompted it. We always provoked it. We always are involved in some capacity. So I think that's really what people are touching on here when they talk about ISIS and religious extremism, and we're going to get more into it.
So how the fuck did AFRICOM, so it started, you said, in 2008.
Yeah, so, okay. Basically,
Search happening.
Yeah, we've got, oh God, there's so much going on. Okay, so we're going to start with like a little background on this from Samar al-Baluchi, who's an anthropologist at UC Irvine, who says, technically the United States is not at war in Africa, but the practice and terminology of the U.S.-led war on terror has changed, making the U.S. military's involvement more difficult to trace. And this has really been the nature of U.S. militarism since Kissinger, if you guys listen to our episode on Kissinger. Traditional war fell out of fashion by the second half of the 1900s, and we instead entered an era of convoluted strategic military and information control campaigns that we don't call war, but that murder people nonetheless. So that is the basis for the history of AFRICOM. And AFRICOM is truly a great case study in this phenomenon. So from 1947 to 1991, U.S. military activities in the African continent were still going on. They were just conducted by 3 separate military commands. There was the European Command, which had responsibility for most of the continent. There was the Central Command, which oversaw Egypt and the Horn of Africa, along with the Middle East, as we call it in the United States, and Central Asia. And then there was the Pacific Command, which administered military ties with Madagascar and other islands in the Indian Ocean. Now, it's important to note that African countries at this time, many of them had large socialist presences.
Oh, yeah, there were, like, socialist revolutions in a hell of a lot of countries, including, actually, like, in Ethiopia.
Yep.
It didn't go well.
So, political scientist Edmund J. Keller wrote about this in Communism, Marxist-Leninism, and Socialism in Africa. It's a paper you can find online. It's also going to be in our show notes for this. And said, communist ideas have been prevalent in Africa since at least the early 20th century. However, nowhere on the continent was a strict form of communism ever practiced. What were practiced were hybrid forms of socialism, including some that eclectically borrowed from Marxist-Leninist and Maoist theory. He goes on to say historically communism on the continent was strongest in Egypt, Sudan, Algeria, and South Africa, which had significant European settlements. But such ideas remained foreign to the African masses until the principles of Marxism-Leninism became popular among intellectuals around the time of World War I. Communist parties in these colonies were constantly under pressure by either the colonial government or white-dominated regimes. The emergence of nationalist movements on the continent coincided with the beginning of the Cold War. So we know at the time, United States, what kind of operations regarding foreign policy were heavily tied up in domino theory. David, do you want to summarize domino theory?
I think it's in the name, but okay. What happens when you push one domino?
Oh, the dominoes next to a fall.
Yeah. So if one country becomes communist, all the other countries kind of
become communist too. And this is like a really funny theory to me because it's just admitting that when people see communism working nearby and it works, they're like, shit, we could do that too.
But I think, right, like the idea is like we could also push the dominoes the other way.
Yeah, well, that's it's like we're just going to aggressively make everything.
I just like as like I love the idea that like there are like that like the United States idea of other people's psychology is that everyone's like kind of a lemming. Like, everyone's just, like, walking around being like, oh, what's over there? I think we're going to go off that cliff.
Well, I think what the United States actually is afraid of, look, the United States knows the things that the United States population doesn't.
Are we personifying?
No, the U.S. government knows that everywhere communism has, like, everywhere there's been a communist revolution and socialism has been implemented, life expectancy and literacy rates have gone up. Conditions for the average person improve. The United States government knows that. They don't want the people knowing that. The CIA has World Factbook data on all of this stuff. They know. And you can find this information in declassified documents. You can find the United States government knowing via these CIA documents, for example, that there were points in time when the USSR was feeding its citizens more calories than the United States was capable of doing under capitalism. That people were living longer lifespans.
Yeah, but those were crappy calories.
They weren't like fun calories.
They were. I want to do right wing stuff. Seed oil.
Oh, okay. They weren't organic, non-seed oil calories. Yeah. So like this is stuff that the U.S. government obviously knows. So I think that their fear when they're like, if one country goes communist, basically everyone nearby is going to be like, it seems like it's working really well for them. That looks appealing. I want to learn more about this communism stuff. So that's really the crux of domino theory. So that's why the United States during this time so aggressively pursued a foreign policy agenda of not letting communism thrive anywhere. And that means that during this time, obviously, if a lot of people in Africa are getting interested in socialism, Africa is then going to be a target of American foreign policy interests because we cannot let that happen. So, from 1998 to 2003, something significant happened on the continent that the United States was kind of involved in, right? It's the Second Congo War. And this was the biggest war in Africa at the time, and it led to the deaths of more than 5 million people, mostly civilians who died from hunger and disease. And this war was driven mostly by demand for Congo's rare materials. And when we talk about Congo, we're going to be talking about what becomes known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I think there's different regions that are called different variations of Congo, but that's what we're going to talk about.
So, Madeline, what are the natural resources? What are the mineral resources?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. We've got strategic minerals that are used in U.S. aeronautics and arms industries. We've got cobalt. We've got cobalt obviously is essential to what we call green energy production, like lithium batteries, things like that. There's a lot of this stuff going on. And the year before this war started, Newsweek, interestingly enough, published a piece acknowledging that the U.S. had staged an operation to try to overthrow the Congolese president, Ann Garrison, who's a Black Agenda Report contributing editor and a member of the Black Alliance for Peace, called a puppet that they had tired of. So, basically, there's this idea that the United States has installed, a puppet presidency in Congo so we could have kind of preferential access to those natural resources. And we got tired of that president because they weren't playing ball, and we tried to stage a coup there the year before this war happened. So the types of things that the United States was extracting under this obviously were the things, like I mentioned, we were using for aeronautics and arms industries, things that help power our cell phones, things that help power electric vehicles, right? And there's this, the cobalt thing alone is a major, major issue. And I think people are just now starting to raise awareness about that. When we talk about the genocide in Congo, people are like, oh my God, my cell phone's contributing to genocide. Yes. So over 250,000 Congolese people work in these mines extracting cobalt alone. And it's really hazardous, dangerous conditions, obviously. It's not great. 40,000 of those people are children. And that means, though, as early as World War II, the U.S. military had a huge interest in the Congo, because there's stuff there that powers our literally our warcrafts, right? So by the 1950s, the State Department was already planning to invest the equivalent of $7 billion today to develop Congo's infrastructure for corporate exploitation, basically, for these resources. And in the 1960s, Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba declared independence for the region from Belgium.
And we had a plan.
What?
You don't know about this?
You and me had a plan?
No, the United States.
Oh.
United States had the United States had a plan, where they were I wanted there are all of these fun little internal memos from the era of Lumumba, because Lumumba was a big Black liberation icon.
Yes.
Where it was maybe we kill him. Maybe we kill him. Maybe. And then, Belgium got there first.
Well, yeah. So, but before this, Lumumba's we're independent from Belgium, and our name now is the Republic of the Congo, and was I'm gonna be kind of friendly with USSR a little bit.
We're gonna go to Bandung.
Not super friendly, even just a little friendly.
No, they went to Bandung.
Yeah. But I'm saying, it's not like they were full commie revolution now.
We're gonna get really into third worldism.
Right. So Lumumba does get murdered, not by the U.S. government, but by MI6.
Mm-hmm.
I would speculate probably with U.S. involvement,
it seems like
though.
Belgium was definitely involved.
Yeah, well, because the CIA just replaced Lumumba with one of our own assets, who's General Mobutu Sese Seko, who named the country Zaire and then just ruled over Zaire until Zaire was overthrown in 1997. So throughout the 1960s, the CIA basically created and managed like everything about Zaire, like the armed forces specifically. We trained special air units. We hired mercenaries to work in the military there. So basically, this guy was a CIA asset, and we made Zaire a U.S. puppet state, basically. But obviously, if MI6 was involved in the assassination, probably in conjunction with some Europeans.
I gotta. This is one of those, like, you'd think, like, it's the 1960s.
Yes.
Congo should have fucked a little bit more with the USSR, because you know who was in MI6 at the time, who we've talked about.
The sexy spies.
The sexy gay spies.
Yeah, the sexy
right, like Kim Philby could have done what they did in Albania, where they were just like, hey, they're sending some people into Albania, you should probably kill them.
And maybe it would have been a different story. If you guys want to know more about the sexy gay spies who were double, maybe triple agents for the USSR.
No, they were double.
Maybe triple?
No.
I thought there was maybe a triple.
No.
I thought one of the guys was maybe a triple. Whatever. There's a multi-part series over on our Patreon, patreon.com/pickmeupimscared, that you can listen to there. So, also as early as the 1990s, the United States was using Uganda, which is nearby, as a way to arm Zaire. And we'll see, the United States is using Uganda a lot. And the late Democratic Republic of the Congo as well. So, the war begins basically in 1998, right? When the president at the time, Laurent Kabila, renegotiates mining contracts. And we know, what does the United States want out of Congo?
They want, like, complete mining rights.
Complete mining rights, right.
Yeah.
So these new contracts are negotiated, and the demands on the behalf of the Congolese government are like, hey, the profits need to be used for us, for our own people, to help develop what is now called, not Zaire anymore, because remember that guy was overthrown, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And President Bill Clinton is like, not on my watch, and arranges to arm, train, and direct the armies of Uganda and Rwanda to launch an invasion of the Congo. To be like, absolutely not. With further extension of the war to Angola being planned with the purpose of installing a more favorable president.
Now, at the end of Clinton's presidency, I was 14. I want to say 13, 14.
Yeah? We were way younger than that, weren't we? Oh, no, you're right, 14, because we voted in Bush's second.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, I like that.
Yeah.
That's the famously 2000 election was,
Yes.
I believe that does the ages right. I gotta say, my dad, a big fan of the NPR, listened to it every day. I don't remember Clinton selling this shit to us.
No, I mean, really the way it was presented, and this is according to the Communist Party of Kenya. Today they have an explainer about it, and they're like, the war was presented to the media as purely an African tribal affair. Those crazy African tribes are fighting with each other like they do because they're savages. It's not us involved at all. But it's like, okay, absolutely not. These are highly developed nations at the time, and the United States is heavily involved in all of this.
So they didn't, like, I'm assuming this is like the blue helmets go in at some point.
Probably, yes, we can expect that. So, according to Pan-Africanist Glenn Ford, the U.S. and its African allies perpetrated the worst genocide since World War II. The death of, 6 million-ish people in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Uganda, which acts as a mercenary for the United States in Africa, is complicit in megadeath in Congo and Somalia. As Milton Alamati, publisher of Black Star News, reported in 2005, the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, found Uganda liable for the Congo crimes. The court awarded Congo $10 billion in reparations, and Uganda's army plundered Congo's wealth and committed mass rapes of both women and men, disemboweled pregnant women, burned people inside of their homes alive, and massacred innocents. So in 2012, Ford also wrote, naturally, as a henchman of the United States, Uganda has not paid the $10 billion it owes Congo. Ugandan leader Yoweri Museveni, who became Ronald Reagan's favorite African after seizing power in 1986 with a guerrilla army packed with child soldiers.
That's a real dubious honor.
Yeah. And who, for decades, waged genocidal war against the Akali people in his country, now plays host to the special forces sent by President Obama, ostensibly to fight the child soldier-abusing Joseph Kony, which we'll talk about later, and his nearly non-existent Lord's Resistance Army. Ford pointed out that Rwanda also has a partnership with the United States military that resulted in one report showing Rwanda as being responsible for some of the genocide as well. So, basically, what we know is that the United States is like, those crazy Africans are fighting with each other. It has nothing to do with us. Racism, 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 right? But the United States is orchestrating all of this and pitting African countries against each other, which we're able to do because we're exerting financial pressure and control. Like over Uganda, over Rwanda, obviously. We're making them client states of us, and we're using them to wage the war in the Congo so we can oust the people who are making it harder for us to get access to mining stuff, and instead just install one of our guys in there like we did Zaire style, before. Like, let's get back to before, when we basically owned this through neo-colonial models. So that's what's really going on here. So during Clinton's time, Al-Belushi says AFRICOM really got its roots planted. So she explained that the underlying logic of AFRICOM can be traced back to the Clinton administration's Africa Crisis Response Initiative in the mid-1990s. As scholar Adeki Adebajo explained in reference to U.S. strategy at that time, the idea was that Africans would do most of the dying, while the United States would do some of the spending to avoid being drawn into politically risky interventions.
Okay.
And I think that really summarizes how the United States engages in quote-unquote warfare now. We're not even to it being founded yet, but this is the roots
No.
Africa.
I love the idea that it's like, look, we're not even doing all the spending.
Oh, yeah. No, we're just doing some of the spending, and we're not sending our guys to die, and we're not declaring official war. We're basically bribing some people where you live to fight you for us, and we don't really have to get our hands that dirty.
Yeah.
So that is kind of why the United States is always engaged in these military conflicts, but we're never at war anymore. Quote unquote war. So she goes on and says, partnerships with elite African military units enable the U.S. military to rely on proxy forces in cases where America is not officially at war and where the presence of U.S. troops would garner scrutiny. These U.S.-trained elite African military units are often touted as the most professional and capable fighting forces in their respective countries. However, according to a 2019 article in the journal Current Anthropology, they are also the least accountable and, quote, most likely to brutally exercise their own authority domestically, end quote. Even in scenarios where these security forces are deployed for ostensibly humanitarian purposes, as in the case of the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, they have resorted to urban warfare tactics against civilians in the name of containing the spread of disease. So, again, these aren't our opinions. These are Pan-Africanists, people deeply invested in the well-being of Africa as a continent. These are Black Americans. These are people from the African diaspora. These are people living in Africa today who are like, hey, the United States is coming in here and exploiting us and trying to find a few people here that they can pay enough to agree with them and just destroy the whole country.
Which I will say, it was
whole continent.
I mean, there's regular colonialism too. Right,
Yes.
like it's like the East India Company and people like that do it, and then like the military sort of like swoops in and is like, we pick you to be our agent.
Exactly. So 2001, September 11th happens, right? And George W. Bush is like, we're doing a global war on terrorism, weapons of mass destruction, Iraq. What else did he
Do you
say?
have to do the accent?
I do have to, actually.
I want to throw. Listen, if you do the accent, I reserve the right to throw a shoe at you.
I mean, that's what you get when you talk like that.
Yeah.
So he proclaimed that Africa's oil supplies were going forward of, quote, strategic national interest. And David, can you speculate as to why?
Natural resources.
Oil specifically after 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
Why we're like, we got to get it from Africa now.
Oh, because we were killing all of the... We were
destabilized the old place we were getting oil from. Completely. We were like, it's getting really hard to get oil out of there. We're blowing up too much. They're mad at us. We created factions. They're fighting with each other. They're fighting with us. Our normal oil guys, we kind of destroyed them. It's a mess now. So we got to go get our oil somewhere else.
We're going to Somalia.
We're going to go to Somalia. So this is at a time, it's worth noting, when U.S. influence in Africa was on the decline and Africa's geostrategic influence was on the rise. So just we're going to point out here some things about Africa. By 2050, Africa is supposed to have a quarter of the planet's entire population.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very large continent. There's so many countries. There's like over 50 countries in Africa. By 2063, the continent is supposed to become the world's third largest economy, and roughly 30% of the world's total mineral reserves are located in Africa, as well as 10% of the world's renewable fresh water sources, 12% of the world's oil, and 8% of the world's natural gas reserves. So this is when we're like, Africa's got stuff we've needed, and we have not been paying much attention to Africa in a while. We got to get back in there. So 2006, we see something that's kind of like proto-AFRICOM, and this is generally speaking, the period between 2001 and 2007, where we see this increased interest in American military operations in Africa, directly linked to our oil concerns. So in 2006, the U.S. military assisted Ethiopia in invading Somalia, which, according to UN observers, led to the worst humanitarian crisis in Africa, worse than Darfur, in the following year. By 2007, February 6th, President George W. Bush announces the creation of AFRICOM officially, a new military command unit for Africa. And on October 1st, Teresa Wayland, remember her? I haven't heard her name in forever. She used to be on the news all the time. That was like George W. Bush's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense.
First, I only remember Condi Rice.
Oh, okay. So I remember Teresa Wayland's name. She was in the news a lot, and she gets put in charge of African affairs. So she ends up being the highest-ranking Defense Department official with principal responsibility for Africa at the Pentagon after this. And she announces that AFRICOM has attained the status of a sub-unified command under the European Command. And then they establish a transition team to officially get it up and running. And this includes officers both from the State Department and the Defense Department. And the work gets carried out in Germany, in Stuttgart, Germany.
They were like, if we do it in Berlin, people are gonna ask questions.
We got to do it in Stuttgart, and that's in coordination with the European Command.
Uh-huh.
So October 1st, 2008, it becomes fully functional. Vice Admiral Robert Mueller declared in a conference in 2008 that AFRICOM was about preserving, quote, the free flow of natural resources from Africa to the global market. He just comes out and says it.
Uh-huh.
It's like, oh my God, he said it. He said the quiet part out loud. But it's like, we're so excited to officially launch AFRICOM because now we can control the free flow of natural resources from Africa to the global market, aka our businesses.
I think that, like, I really wish that the United States government, when it presented things to us,
just was that honest all the time.
Like, I think that would rock. I think because we, like, right, it's not, like, a little honesty goes a long way. And I think that if the government were like, we're gonna kill some people,
it's gonna make your cars run real good, though.
Would you like a hybrid battery in your car? Just saying.
We gotta kill some people.
But 50 miles per gallon. It's pretty fucking good. Also the oil.
Then you know what's going on. I mean, yeah.
I think a lot of, like,
it's very honest. I mean, the Democratic Party almost got there in the last election when they were like, are we gonna continue committing genocide in Gaza? Yes. But
Okay, this is off. I have not known what to make of the thing that's like is some journalist talking to Israeli officials who was like, yeah, the Biden administration never asked us.
Oh, yeah.
Where I've been like, they even just as like an aside one day over coffee.
No, never. They never. And for those of you who aren't up to speed on this, if you remember, like AOC, for example, famously gave a speech that was like,
the Biden
administration is working tirelessly for a ceasefire, and it recently was revealed that the Biden administration never once requested a ceasefire. So that's some news that just came out. But that really is, the Democratic Party did kind of go mask off, and they're like, are we going to keep committing genocide? Yes, but are you going to get maybe 10% more civil liberties in the United States? Maybe.
I think
they asked you to make the devil's bargain at the election.
I think that, like, if people just, like, put things very bluntly, I think more Americans than I would, like, the moral side of me would like to admit would be like, cool.
Yeah.
I think, but, like, also, like, everyone would just be like, okay, we all know the game. We're all on the same page.
Right. There'd be no illusions that anything was operating differently. So by mid-December of 2008, we already have documentation of some of the early AFRICOM projects, like one that happened in Jungo, Congo. A group called the Uganda People's Defense Forces, the UPDF, executed something called Operation Lightning Thunder, a military strike against the Lord's Resistance Army. Pin in that. Coney 2012 coming later.
Yeah,
we're going to do a
whole... Okay.
So, they are, though, at this time, a Ugandan religious extremist group. And they're doing this in Garamba Park, Congo. So the UPDF were not acting alone in their mission. They were backed and financed and trained by AFRICOM. And they employed 17 military strategists to help plan the operation. AFRICOM did. AFRICOM also provided satellite phones, intelligence, and $1 million in fuel alone to like back this. Not like literal fuel, to like fuel it.
Oh.
Not like a literal oil.
I was like,
just in like.
did they have that all around there? Like that seems like the thing.
That's the whole point. No. So the attack does not go well. First of all, they don't get the Lord's Resistance Army, and the Lord's Resistance Army just like kind of carries out these massive wave of massacres while they flee from the UPDF. They killed as many as 900 civilians in like spree killings that were absolutely brutal. They were slaughtering people in churches. They tried manually decapitating toddlers. Like, it was bad. And the rebel leaders of the Lord's Resistance Army totally escaped unscathed.
Okay, do you have anything on what's the fucking ideological thing of the Lord's Resistance Army?
I don't think there is one. And again, we
Okay.
will talk about them more when we get to 2012, when we talk about Coney 2012. So I'm going to put a pin in that convo for later. But what you need to know about the Lord's Resistance Army is that they were bad guys, but they were not the force by anyone's account who knows what's going on. They were not the force that the United States blew them up to be mentally to justify our military actions in Africa.
Yeah, that one really, we'll talk about this, but that one really came out of nowhere.
It totally
What?
did, and it was definitely like a CIA operation situation. So, Julia Spiegel, who's a Uganda-based researcher for the Enough Project, which campaigns against genocide, said the operation was poorly planned and poorly executed. The massacres were the Lord's Resistance Army's standard operating procedure, and regional governments knew this. And for their part, American officials conceded the operation, did not go well, and that they didn't plan appropriately for this. So, the first big operation AFRICOM is doing, tanks. Really, really bad. Like almost 1,000 people are killed. And U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for African Affairs, Teresa Whalen, made a point to state that additionally this year, the model they were going to go after for this AFRICOM stuff was going to be Liberia. So they're like, Liberia, that's an African country where AFRICOM provides the foundation on which the 3 pillars of economy, governance, and rule of law and social development are based. So this is interesting because we're getting some motives and understanding of like AFRICOM's perspective on not just what happened here with the Lord's Resistance Army, but like in all of their future undertakings. What Whalen was really talking about is what she perceived to be the successes of other U.S. and Western intervention projects in the region up to this point. So she admitted that they were using this neoliberal model of soft power that had taken hold in Liberia historically as a foundational basis for the future of AFRICOM action on the continent. But soft power doesn't always translate into military actions. So the Black Agenda report talks about this and says, Liberia, like many African countries, suffers from devastating poverty as a result of a history of colonialism and neocolonialism. According to the UN development reports, Liberia ranks in the bottom half of the low category of human development classification. Additionally, its debt to GDP is 57% as of 2023. This means that the government spends that percentage of its GDP on debt servicing, forcing it to reduce public spending on health and education and other public needs due to austerity measures. An Oxfam report showed that Liberia is among other West African countries that spend more on debt servicing than a whole year spent on education. So this is important to note. So this is what they're like, this looks like it's going really well. But the basis for all of AFRICOM's operating perspective is, again, these neocolonial soft power kind of models. So the Black Agenda report, which I like Black Agenda report a lot. I think you guys should look into them if you haven't yet. They do great Black leftist reporting. Goes on and says, part of resisting neocolonialism means developing what Thomas Sankara called an Addis Ababa United Front Against Debt in his speech on foreign debt at the OAU, July 1987, where he said debt cannot be repaid. First, because if we don't repay, lenders will not die. That is for sure. But if we repay, we are going to die. That is also for sure. So this kind of idea that Africa is getting like stuck in this debt cycle, this debt trap, and that is how neocolonialism executes like its hold. And this is what AFRICOM is like, we need to exist in support of that. So basically, AFRICOM let 900 civilians be brutally murdered in service of basically a model that relies on debt servicing.
Okay, so this is like IMF loans.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
IMF loans, World Bank loans, and we have some episodes about the IMF, I believe, as well. So this debt is central to neoliberal economic models that force financial austerity on nations that have been ravaged by Western powers. We basically say, we will help you by giving you loans if you agree to not spend any of your country's money on improving your quality of life for your people, and you allow us to come in and handle everything, including trying to run these small-time gangs out of your town, right? But we didn't run the small-time gangs out of the town even.
Yeah.
We pissed them off, and then they killed a bunch of people.
I will say, while you were talking, I did look up the Lord's Resistance Army ideology, and it seems to be an extremist Pentecostal, like, slightly culty thing.
It's a cult.
Yeah,
It's
and it's
definitely a
like,
cult.
where I was just like, oh yeah, let's look, and it's like of a, like, we murder women kind of vibe.
Yes. Yeah, it is a cult. So, 2009, we're still involved in Congo. We're not getting out of there. And a Rwanda and Ugandan militia called the National Congress for the Defense of the People, or CNDP for short, gets incorporated officially into the Congolese army with U.S. backing, which is wild. Critics are like, hey, this seems like maybe it's like a military surrender of like land and access to Rwanda and Uganda. And everyone's like, don't be silly. It's definitely not. But on March 23rd, 2009, a document was actually signed acknowledging that it was a surrender of territory, and some reporters got a hold of it, and they're like, what is going on? So what we see, obviously, is if we think about Rwanda and Uganda as kind of vassal states of AFRICOM at this time, AFRICOM is expanding kind of its influence in Congo pretty early on into its operations, and that's going to be a central part of our focus going forward. So the following year, Vice Admiral Robert Mueller, the guy w's straight talker, right?
So I keep
wrote a
asking,
whole think piece.
I keep asking, is this the same Robert Mueller? This can't be.
No, I think that guy's an Mueller.
Okay,
This guy's an Moeller.
Because I was that they.
It's like Mueller.
I feel like if I were the two of them, I would team up for some sort of buddy comedy.
Mueller and Mueller.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he actually writes a whole think piece about what's going on with AFRICOM in Foreign Policy magazine. And he says, let there be no mistake. AFRICOM's job is to protect American lives and promote American interests.
I like this Robert.
I mean, he's really honest. He's really honest.
I mean, I don't like him. I like him. I think I think that it's nice to have someone just say what they mean.
And that's what he's doing. So this is the year then that AFRICOM in Congo creates this partnership, a military partnership basically, where they form a new unit of 740 soldiers who graduate from AFRICOM training. And AFRICOM calls them a model for future reforms within the Congolese armed forces. So we've already got the Rwandan and the Ugandan little militia that's incorporated now into the Congolese military. And now AFRICOM is like, and we're training a separate unit in the Congolese military now. So we're just really going all in the Congolese military. And these members of this new battalion are lauded by AFRICOM. They're like, we're doing such great things here. But what do you think happened?
It didn't go well.
It didn't go well. The new battalion that AFRICOM trained was shortly after that exposed for looting villages, murdering civilians, raping dozens of women and girls, some as young as 6 years old, within just a couple of years after its foundation.
That does seem like wherever the American military, either by proxy or just regular goes, it's like
It's horrible.
Someone's going to get raped.
Yeah, it's awful. And Congo is not the only place that the newly formed AFRICOM has, agendas going on. There's also Somalia. So there's a famine that occurs in 2010's Somalia, and it's thought to be the result of the U.S. military-backed Ethiopian invasion of Somalia in late 2006, remember? So AFRICOM paid Ugandan soldiers to keep watch over Western interests in Somalia at that time because they're operating as like the vassal state now of the United States. And we also had 1,200 soldiers at a U.S. base in neighboring Djibouti who were thought to have been involved in this Somalia famine too. So it's only 1.5 years, really, since AFRICOM's been up and running, and we're already facilitating mass murder, the looting of villages, sexual assault on a massive scale, famine, starvation, and death. And this is really, I want to tell you it gets better. It does not get better. This is what AFRICOM
I think
does.
they got to put this on their like MS Paint logo.
Yeah. Murder, sexual assault, genocide, starvation.
Yeah.
We do it all, AFRICOM.
There's just and like a circle around it. I feel like a graphic designer could have a lot of fun with that.
I mean, it's what's going on. So this leads us to 2011, the big one.
Coney.
Libya.
Oh, Libya.
It's 2012.
Okay. I don't. What? I assumed that Libya would be in Central Com or whatever the fuck it was.
No, Libya ends up being the first war kind of commanded by AFRICOM.
Gaddafi, a complicated man.
Gaddafi is a complicated man, and we'll talk about him. So, the U.S. via AFRICOM and NATO end up attacking Libya, and this leads to the destruction of the country and the murder of its leader, Gaddafi, under two different programs called Odyssey Dawn and Unified Protector. So the Hood Communist Collective was reporting on this and said, after this happened, corrupt leaders began to allow AFRICOM forces to operate in their countries and establish military-to-military relations with the United States directly as a result of Libya. So basically, the United States identified Libya as an ideological target. Like, ideologically, Libya is a problem for the United States and AFRICOM. So, like, if we want to continue to expand our reach in Africa, on the continent, we got to take out Libya.
And is this because, like, Gaddafi, for all of his complications,
we're going to talk about his
African
thing. So we'll talk about his ideology and why specifically the United States identified him as a problem. But what we need to understand is that the United States was correct to identify him as a problem, because the second Gaddafi had fallen, and by fallen I mean was viciously murdered.
But I don't even.
It's horrifying. But at the time that happened, it really did open up the rest of the continent for our AFRICOM kind of domination to come in. So as Nefta Freeman says, the result was imperialist militarism waged by proxy, with neocolonial powers vying for unfettered access to Libya's oil, and others like Syria trying to find some level of regional security against rivals entangled in the conflict. So this is another thing we need to talk about when we talk about the United States intervening places, is that we usually, when we do stuff like this, we leave so much destruction behind, and we do not have any concern for the cleanup or the aftermath. Like, when we talk about the fall of the USSR, many people don't know that the fall of the USSR correlated with the single greatest drop in life expectancy ever recorded in history. Like, when the United States spent decades trying to destroy the USSR, when it finally happened, the United States was not there to try to help clean up anything.
No,
it
was
benefit us financially.
Enforced liberalization, which turned basically the Russian government, among others, and like into a kleptocracy, right?
Exactly.
Like
everything you don't like about Russia now, well, that's what happened when the United States spent decades pressuring the dismantling of the USSR. And I think it's important to note the USSR was dismantled internally from corruption within the ranks.
Yeah.
But we didn't care what happened in the Balkans. We didn't care, certainly, what happened in Libya. We come in and we're like, get these guys we don't like out of there. And then in the aftermath, it leaves this vacuum where a lot of different factions in all of these countries that we do this in, where we're like, we liberated them, bye. They come in and they just start this violent conflict in the region over power, over control, over influence. And the people there really, really suffer. This is the same thing we saw at Yugoslavia, Kosovo. Yeah. The United States and the NATO bombings in particular have the same effect there.
So this is off topic for one brief moment, or this is still Libya. Okay. But just as like an object example of this, I pulled up an old BBC News report titled "Libya and Migrant Slave Market Footage Sparks Outrage" from 2017. In the I'm going to say there were not open-air slave markets under Gaddafi.
There were not. That's correct. And we'll talk about what was happening under Gaddafi. So, in Libya, under the command of Hillary Clinton during the Obama administration, the USA and NATO, via AFRICOM, the USA, decimated the Socialist People's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya. Is that how it's pronounced? That's the official name for the Libyan government as it existed under Gaddafi. And Gaddafi wasn't a Marxist, he wasn't a communist, but he did implement a lot of socialist policies, which made him an enemy of the U.S. government early on.
Though he was...
He developed something called the Third International Theory.
Yeah, I mean, and he was a Pan-Africanist. He is a weird fucking guy.
But he did a lot of really good things. He's not perfect.
No, I mean, I think, right,
But the idea that the United States expects perfection of other countries or we will come bomb the shit out of you, like, that's not even a consideration. Like, other places should be entitled to their sovereignty and to resolve their own issues without the United States coming in and playing world cop and killing everybody.
No, I mean, right, among other things, like, Libya had, like a fabulous aquifer system, which meant that, like, the public infrastructure of Libya prior to the U.S. intervention was one of the best in North Africa. Gaddafi had the over his history, he seems to, like, in a very Saddam Hussein-esque way, bop in and out of favor with various people, like, where it's like suddenly he's on the U.S. side for a couple months and then he's not, and then it's one of those things.
Yeah, so the important thing to think about his ideology, which really made him a target of the U.S.'s ire, is that third international theory thing. So basically, he presented this as an alternative to Marxism and capitalism, which combined elements of nationalism, socialism, left-wing populism, and anti-imperialism. And the result was actually, while not Marxism, a lot of stuff that threatened Western power and money interests, while providing, yes, for the people in Libya pretty decently. There was free healthcare, there was free electricity, there was no private business in things like banking or insurance, for example. Average income for people in Libya skyrocketed under Gaddafi. As one synopsis from the U.S. Library of Congress explained, Gaddafi's policies identified private retail, trade, rent, and wages as forms of exploitation, sounds pretty Marxist, that should be abolished. Instead, worker self-management committees and profit participation partnerships were to function in public and private enterprises. A property law was passed that forbade ownership of more than one private dwelling, and Libyan workers took control of a large number of companies, turning them into state-run enterprises. Retail and wholesale trading operations were replaced by state-owned people's supermarkets, where Libyans, in theory, could purchase whatever they needed at low prices. So you hear from this a lot of socialist-esque kind of policies, and you could see why the United States would not like this, because this meant trouble for U.S. businesses. These policies helped the poor in Libya, but they upset and alienated the more educated and wealthy, who formed opposition groups or left the country altogether. And according to People's World, Gaddafi was leading a nation that by all accounts had the most egalitarian distribution of wealth on the whole continent at the time as a result of these measures. And he was an eclectic, weird guy.
He had weird private army of, like, I don't know how else to put this, hot ladies.
Yeah, he was a weird guy.
Like, I think, listen, Madeline, we are a podcast. Being salacious.
You want to be salacious about it.
I don't want to be. I think if you're like, we're gonna talk about Libya, and you don't mention the army of hot ladies, are you even a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, he was a character. And, so this makes him obviously an easy target of the U.S. government. He closed the borders to international business. That's a surefire way to piss off the good old USA. More than that, though, Gaddafi was viewed as something as a leader in the Pan-African school of thought, which David mentioned. And this meant that as long as Libya was holding out and refusing to collaborate with AFRICOM, which they were, other countries around Africa were following suit, because other countries did view Gaddafi as kind of this leader in this Pan-Africanist idea. And even if they weren't fully on board, they were like, there's something here. And Gaddafi was kind of like, we could be the United States of Africa.
Like, we could just all
be a state, basically.
Which probably
giant
would not have.
I don't know, probably work about the same as the United States does. So this was this kind of idea, and it was, like, appealing to people. People were like, okay, this could work. With Gaddafi assassinated, though, suddenly there would be new opportunity for influence in Africa, influence that could facilitate cooperation with AFRICOM. So, the USA, AFRICOM specifically, in tandem with NATO, led a massive assault on Libya, which ended with the violent, brutal sexual assault and murder of Gaddafi on camera for the whole world to see.
Yeah.
Just truly disturbing, troubling moment in history. It is one of the most horrifying.
And the U.S. Provided air cover for his capture. I think that's worth, like, the quote-unquote extremist groups or whatever that captured him.
Yeah, we basically did our new model of warfare. We paid locals to do it for us, so we could be like, it wasn't super us, but it was us.
No, like, the U.S. provided the air cover.
And we'll hear in a second, Hillary Clinton took full credit. So, as People's World says, U.S. AFRICOM not only cooperated with the destruction of a legitimate republic, here oil companies such as Total and Royal Dutch Shell murdered Gaddafi. The flow of oil, not the welfare and wishes of the Libyan people, dictated the international response to Libya's independence stance. Alain Juppé, the foreign French minister in 2011, confirmed that BP France had private discussions with the National Transitional Council to provide not only support against the Libyan government, but held talks concerning oil agreements. An article in the Brown Political Review says, Libya since 2011, Bias in International Oil Interests, that's the title. It says, the fact that the conflict, which lasted from June to October 2011, had stopped Libya's existing oil production was one of the driving forces behind European involvement in the Libyan civil conflict. Libya alone produced 2% of the world's oil production, which is over 1.6 million barrels of oil a year, and much of it was shipped to Europe. U.S.'s AFRICOM and its leading organization, NATO, not only would provide logistics but tactical support for the overthrow of Gaddafi. American and British Navy forces fired over 110 Tomahawk cruise missiles, while the French Air Force, the UK's Royal Air Force, and the Royal Canadian Air Force undertook all sorts of military actions across Libya. Coalition forces built a blockade. And again, I want you to remember, these are coalition forces of white Western European and American powers who are mad at an African country for not letting us exploit their oil. There were fighter jets from France that were attacking Libyan tanks and vehicles. Gaddafi's vessels were forced to sit helplessly in the port as ordered by the terms of the UN ceasefire agreement. What was unclear, even by major news sources, was the cause of the war. Many could not tell whether it was to enforce the UN ceasefire agreement or to aid Gaddafi's opposition in the Libyan civil war, which again the United States funded and exploited. One thing is for certain though, US's AFRICOM offered no peaceful way of resolving the conflict. So that's kind of the People's World assessment of it. One of the more horrifically subhuman things Hillary Clinton did during her career, which I'll never forget, is laugh about the brutal sexual assault and murder of Gaddafi that eventually did occur while telling a reporter, "We came, we saw, he died." And then she laughs gleefully.
No, I do. Like, that was,
When people talk about hating Hillary Clinton, it's not because of her emails. It's not. It's because, for me, this was a pivotal moment in my what? Like
no,
20s?
yeah, you were well into your 20s.
In my 20s, yeah, where I'm like, oh, like, this is fucked up. Like, we have these white Western colonizing forces going into formerly colonized lands in Africa and literally taking glee in brutal, horrific murders of these people who refuse to give us what we want.
That was, I mean, I do, like, that was one that I, like, remember, but, like, because I was like, I don't remember Bill Clinton selling us on any of this shit in the 90s, because I was a kid. But I do remember the Libya thing kind of coming out of nowhere, where it was like, wait, what? Like, where, like, because it was Obama, and Obama was like,
yeah, this was under the Obama administration.
Right, like, reports were around about Obama's treatment of, like, the drone bombings, like the bombings of wedding parties in Yemen and stuff like that. But, like, he had pitched himself in exceptionally vague terms as an anti-war president.
Which is so weird. He won the Nobel Peace Prize, I believe.
Just for being elected. I gotta point that out.
Yeah.
He won the Nobel Peace Prize for being elected.
Wild.
Right, which is fucking bizarre.
And he was a very pro-war president.
Yeah, but he pitched himself in very vague terms of, like, well, I wasn't in Congress then when the Iraq war vote was made. So he was like, I think it was a bad idea and it's being mishandled. But it was...
But I didn't do it.
He's
just an ooh little baby innocent president who doesn't have any say.
But when he was running for office, people inferred from the I wasn't in Congress, I think it was a bad decision, he's an anti-war president, right?
Right.
And so the Libya thing, where I was like, okay, so the justification for continuing to fuck up Iraq and Afghanistan, leave that aside for one moment. Now we're doing fucking Libya?
Yeah.
Right? Like, there was like a, like, what the fuck moment.
Yeah. I think that's the moment where it became, like, very clear to anybody who's paying attention even a little bit.
Yeah.
That this was just business as usual. We were not going to get anything different out of this president. So what followed after Gaddafi's death is something David touched on, right? It was Kenyan Marxists described this as, quote, a campaign of genocide against Black Libyans and the reintroduction of slavery.
Yeah.
So that is how African Marxists on the continent looked at what was going on in Libya, and they're like, oh shit, this is bad. So Black Libyans were being targeted. Genocide occurred against them. Slavery, like David was saying, there were open-air slave markets started popping up in Libya. It was bad. And to the United States, this was a strategic win.
Yeah.
And we're like, yay, we did it. As Mike Sweeney explains, from an operational standpoint, and Mike Sweeney's like a military guy. He's like a military strategist kind of guy. He says, from an operational standpoint, Odyssey Dawn and Unified Protector, the two kind of military, programs we did this under, are generally considered successes. They achieved their intended goals, halting regime action against rebel forces and enabling Gaddafi's oust. From a strategic standpoint, the outcome is far murkier. Unity post-Gaddafi was short-lived. A 6-year civil war ensued in 2014. Humanitarian suffering was widespread. Amidst this instability, a number of Islamic terrorist organizations emerged in Libya, including an affiliate of ISIS. So Sweeney goes on and says Africa Command, AFRICOM, would ultimately execute over 500 manned and unmanned airstrikes in Libya from 2012 to 2019. That's after this, after the end of the initial intervention covered by Odyssey Dawn and Unified Protector. So that brings us to 2012. By this point, AFRICOM has grown, but when I say grown, I want you guys to really understand the scale of its operation. There's only around 2,000 U.S. personnel working for AFRICOM because they don't need to, right? In keeping with our neocolonial model we talked about, the role of the U.S. in foreign affairs has been changing. It's been moving to just training and funding locals we can find to do our dirty work for us so we don't have to get our hands dirty. So the idea that there's just 2,000 people working in the United States to execute these types of programs all over Africa. And we're talking about the biggest ones, but imagine this is happening in every country that has strategic kind of alliances with AFRICOM or countries that are enemies of AFRICOM, right? So The Guardian at this time reports the idea is that it will not be U.S. or European forces fighting and dying for Western interests in the coming colonial wars against Africa, but Africans. The U.S. soldiers employed by AFRICOM are not there to fight, but to direct. The great hope is that the African Union's forces can be subordinated to a chain of command headed by AFRICOM. So this is as early as 2012. This is 4 years into this thing, right? So it's pretty obvious that this is the model we are using. We show up, we train some guys who will do what we say, and then we leave and we've got plausible deniability. Our guys didn't die. It was all so clean on our end. So in 2012, Glenn Ford, who we talked about earlier from the Black Agenda Report, wrote an article for Socialist Viewpoint about the U.S. escalating military penetration into Africa. So people are starting to notice, this AFRICOM thing is getting really intense. The Libya situation really brought a lot of global attention to what AFRICOM was up to. So Glenn Ford wrote, according to the Army Times newspaper, the United States will soon deploy a brigade of 3,000 troops and likely more for duty across the continent of Africa. This is a pilot program, and it has all the markings of a permanent roving presence, joining the 1,200 U.S. soldiers stationed in Djibouti and the 100-plus special forces dispatched to Central Africa by President Obama. As always and everywhere, the U.S. is looking for bases to occupy, although the U.S. military command in Africa doesn't call them bases. Rather, as part of a regionally aligned force concept, soldiers will live and work among Africans in safe communities approved by the U.S. government, according to AFRICOM's Major General David Hogg. David, does this sound like a foreign occupying settler neocolonial operation to you? Because it sounds kind of concerning to me.
I mean, it does, but I also... for the only thing that came to mind was for some reason Mormon missions.
Oh, okay.
But what if the Green Berets or the Navy SEALs did it?
Yes.
That's where it was we're just gonna send, they're gonna build some houses, do some conversions,
and they're converting you to the USA's mode of thinking about the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're doing. We're proselytizing.
Yeah.
So Ford explains the proposed network of quote-unquote safe communities to accommodate the highly mobile U.S. brigade is a euphemism for joint bases and the most intense U.S. fraternization with local African militaries. Regime change will never be further away than a drink at the officers' club, which I think is great. He's a very evocative writer. So he also said, Americans, no matter how bloody their hands, have always liked to think of themselves as innocents abroad. As far as our mission goes, it's uncharted territory, says AFRICOM's General Hogg. Not really. The Americans are following a European chart in Africa that goes back centuries, and their own long experience in the serial rape of Latin America, where the close fraternization of U.S. and Latin American militaries in recent decades smothered the region in juntas, dirty wars, torture-based states, and outright genocide, which this all sounds so much like, Operation Condor, WINSEC School of the Americas, which we've talked about before. So Ford goes on to say, Africa is being dominated by military means. Obama's good governance smokescreen for U.S. neocolonialism is embedded in AFRICOM's stated mission to deter and defeat transnational threats and to provide a security environment conducive to good governance and development. Translation, to bring the so-called war on terror to every corner of the continent and ensure that U.S. corporate interests get favorable treatment from African governments. So this was kind of Glenn Ford's assessment of what's going on. I think it's really good. It's important to note that by 2012, also, basically every African country had some sort of military alliance or agreement with AFRICOM, except for Zimbabwe and I can never pronounce this country. How do you pronounce it? Eritrea. Okay, thank you. All but a handful were taking part in military operations staged by Americans with U.S. command and control equipment and practices. And that same year, an agreement was made with the USA and Botswana to allocate a previously existing military base for strictly AFRICOM endeavors. Now, it's important to note, Botswana is a relatively small country. It's got less than 2 million people there in total, and this military base was huge. And it was there, why? Because it's an easy region for us to control and because of proximity and access to nearby countries. So remember also what's going on in Congo. I said we'd get there in 2012.
They're in the yard. The Lords, whatever.
Yes, we're going to talk about Kony 2012. So remember that the Ugandan and Rwandan militia group had kind of been absorbed into the Congolese army. And along with that came the Congolese kind of giving some territory control to Uganda and Rwanda, which were controlled by the United States government.
And many people in Congo were like, it seems like we just gave up a bunch of territory.
Right. And then the Congo government was like, no. And then all these reporters were like, yes, we found the documents. So this militia specifically of the Ugandan and Rwandan kind of armed forces who were absorbed into the Congolese military, they were called the CNDP, if you remember. They ended up staging this huge rebellion in 2012. And they were like, you know what? When we signed that agreement in March 23rd of 2009, where you were supposed to give us stuff, you actually didn't give us everything in that. And we're mad. So a faction of them who were really mad about this formed a new group called M23, named after March 23rd, the date of the agreement. And they were like, we're going to destroy everything till you give us absolutely everything that you agreed to. So they ended up just ravaging the Congo countryside, committing massacres everywhere to try to strong-arm the Congolese government into fulfilling the rest of the demands, basically, or requirements on that agreement. So the U.S. is like, oh, God, this is not great. For us, we now are going to work with the UN, and we're going to drive M23 back into Rwanda and Uganda because these are our guys, basically, and it's creating problems for us because now we're pissing off the Congolese government, who we've been working on making our guys too. So 2 of our guys are fighting with each other.
Oh.
And this makes us look bad. So we got to get the M23s, we got to get them out of here because this is complicating things. So the U.S. does this, and Obama's like, we've done a humanitarian victory. We stopped the bad guys. Never mind the fact that we probably put the bad guys in there. But in the peace talks that followed, the Democratic Republic of the Congo actually just conceded to everything that M23 wanted, which is wild.
Yeah.
And this is where Kony 2012 comes in.
So he's the Lords whatever?
The Lords Resistance Army, or the LRA, is led by Joseph Kony. And he ends up attacking Uganda from Congo, from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, in 2006, the UN had actually backed, if you remember, Uganda's invasion of the Congo to hunt for Kony. And AFRICOM had provided covert assistance to Uganda in a failed counterinsurgency later, which had actually led to the LRA increasing their violence in Congo. Oh, this was actually
I gotta say about the Kony thing, because this was a kind of like the Gaddafi thing, but even more bizarre, at least from my perspective.
My hydroponic garden just started watering itself. David got really afraid of the sound. I think I need to refill it with water.
Okay. But no, because Kony, I knew a lot of people who were like, that Gaddafi guy seems really bad, and specifically the hot women soldiers was like, they're like, that's crazy that he just has hot chicks.
With guns. Visually, very cool looking.
Very fucking cool looking.
Very cool looking.
But so a lot of lib-coded people were like, yeah, that Gaddafi guy is super bad.
Yeah.
And I knew where I would just be like, that's weird.
Yeah.
A little bit like Casey Anthony. I'm just
I don't know about this. Chris actually has this really cool old shirt. It's Mickey Mouse flipping the bird, and it says fuck you, Gaddafi. And I'm like, this is a very edgelord shirt to wear. It's one of those things that's a piece of history.
No, I mean it's sorry.
It was a pop culture
yeah,
thing.
Yeah. But the Coney thing, that was also like anytime anyone back in 2012 was like, "Where's Joseph Coney?" I was like, "You might be an idiot."
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, if you are an American and you're like, "I care,"
Yeah.
you don't need to care about that.
Yeah, the Coney thing. Well, okay, so the reason everybody cared about it, if you remember, is that
Child soldiers. That's what they said.
it's because a documentary came out that year.
Oh, okay.
So in 2012, a documentary comes out about the Lord's Resistance Army called Coney 2012.
Yeah.
That's literally what it's called. And the film was produced by an NGO called Invisible Children, which was, according to U.S. Special Operation Command documents, a part of a U.S. psychological warfare operation. It was a PSYOP.
I will say Invisible Children would have made like a really good like Crass Records band.
Okay, I was thinking it kind of sounds like MGMT or something.
No, I feel like what's the
Music of the era.
you take a whiskey shot, you take a
Chumbawamba.
they would have toured with Chumbawamba and like the X
Oh, okay, interesting.
and like the EX.
Yeah. Okay. Not X.
Not X. Chumbawamba X tour would have gone hard.
That would have been so good. It works.
Yeah,
yeah,
both
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
rockabilly coded.
Yeah. No, what? No. Chumbawamba and
I feel like
neither of those are rockabilly coded bands.
X like LA, Los Angeles.
Yes.
That is okay. Look at the fucking guitars for that band.
Okay, just because somebody looks rockabilly in the 80s,
and he's playing.
Everyone looked like that.
The Johnny B. Good riff,
Okay. No, X is not rockabilly.
They are rockabilly adjacent.
I don't know about that.
They are rockabilly adjacent.
Okay.
They are not. They're not. I don't. The Reverend Horton Heat.
Yeah.
That's gross. But if you're not like, wow, that band, they're playing they're playing the Johnny B. Good riff. They got the fucking pompadour.
You guys can never trust anything David says again.
Because
yes, because you said X is
John Doe went on to form like trad rock band after that. I want to say
so that does not mean they were a rockabilly band.
They are.
They're not.
I'm not saying they're rock. I'm saying rockabilly adjacent.
Okay, well, whatever the case, I think of Invisible Children as being like a very like dance pop kind of band from that era. You know, Pumped Up Kicks.
Who?
The song "Pumped Up Kicks." Foster the People.
Like, are Pumped Up Kicks where you have like the thing on your shoe?
Yeah, it's a song about school shootings, though.
Oh, I thought it was about when you pump.
Well,
up your kicks.
It is a song about pumping up your kicks so you can outrun the gun. You don't remember the song? All those little kids.
This was the era where I became.
All the other kids. That's what I was saying.
I became really I was like, I only if that band does not tour to the tiny little town that I live in.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, I knew about these bands because sometimes I would go to lesbian dance nights in Bernal Heights in San Francisco, and they always played these bands like Justice, MGMT.
I was music. Like, if it was like a Vice magazine shit. It wasn't
even Vice magazine because it was more mainstream than that. But I get what you're saying. So, whatever the case, are
the Invisible Children.
NGO. It's an NGO that's part of the U.S. PSYOP machine. So, what had happened is Army Special Operations Forces basically were like the Congolese and Ugandan militaries, several NGOs, including Invisible Children, all get named as partners in their operations and these documents to try to talk about what's going on with Coney. And basically what they were trying to do is build Coney up into this like Saddam Hussein-like character to justify doing whatever the fuck we wanted in Congo.
Yeah, which like at the time, I remember being like, because we were hot off of by the way, I think I said Brett Stevens earlier, Chris Stevens.
Chris Stevens.
Again, but hot off the heels of like being like reading like Gaddafi is the new Saddam Hussein.
Yes.
Right, getting like Coney is the new. I was like, we gotta stop having new Saddam Husseins.
Well, this is actually this is the movie that one of our English teachers made us watch in high school that I like still to this day, called Bob Roberts.
Oh yeah,
and there was like a quote in the movie where it's like, oh, we take these like maybe it's not, maybe it's Wag the Dog, whatever the case. It's some political movie from the 90s where it's like a satire movie, but they're like, oh, we take these individual characters and we blow them up into these like huge Saddam Hussein type
Yeah.
whole bads, and they're just some guy, and it's not great, but it's not justification to go in and murder millions of people there. And that's like literally what's happening here. So we have this documentation now that basically it was a U.S. government psyop to try to convince average American people that Kony was, then the Lord's Resistance Army was a massive problem in Congo. And it's not that it wasn't a problem, but it was a small-time militia that really was exacerbated by the U.S. government being there and provoked by the U.S. government being there. But even at its biggest provocation was not, like, the U.S. military entering and just destroying everything would have done far more damage and caused far more deaths than this group would have. And we didn't handle the situation, obviously, delicately. So as The Guardian reported, it's no coincidence that within months of the fall of basically Libya, and in the same month of Gaddafi's execution, President Obama announced the deployment of 100 U.S. Special Forces to 4 different African countries, including Uganda, ostensibly to aid the hunt for Joseph Kony. They are instead training Africans to fight the U.S.'s proxy war in Somalia, where 2,000 more Ugandan soldiers had been sent the previous month. So basically, while this is happening, everybody's like, you guys are coming hot off the success of getting Gaddafi out of Libya. You now realize you got rid of the guy who was kind of the Pan-Africanist thought leader at the time. That means you're able to influence more countries to do your bidding. How do you justify the U.S. increasing our military action in Africa? We need a big bad. And we're going to make Joseph Kony the biggest bad.
I feel like this was, right, the Obama administration is really running out of steam. Right, like because also I gotta point out, around this time, like, this was the red line.
The red line
in Syria, which was like the white phosphorus bombs or whatever.
Yes,
do you remember
right.
this?
Yeah.
Where the Obama-Clinton foreign policy stuff was beginning to look kind of like lame, where it was like the red line is like doing chemical warfare in Syria, and then that happened, and Obama was like, we're still not doing anything because we're not trying to get involved in that.
Right.
We will be providing weapons to various quote-unquote moderate groups that mostly turn out to be various forms of jihadists.
Yeah. Yes.
But, right, like, so I feel like the Obama administration was like trying to pitch the us on something that felt cogent.
Yeah.
Carney is smart. Like, they're like, you are scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Right, but do you remember it was very effective because it was a huge cultural phenomenon.
No, yeah, but in that,
like, I had friends who were like, "Oh my God, Kony!
No, I
don't have to watch it," and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, my bullshit detector went off immediately.
I think this was kind of again, like the Casey Anthony thing, where at the time I was just like, I don't really think I need to care about that.
Yeah,
I don't
I don't have enough information about this. The people telling me this information I don't exactly trust.
I just it was like the lamest people I knew were
yeah,
and I was just like, I'm not gonna watch a doc like.
It was a pop culture event.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's a pop culture event, and that's like, you know, the thing about propaganda is that a lot of the things we think we know about the world are pop culture moments.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about how many people don't know what happened in Tiananmen Square. How many people, when they think about the guy in front of the tank, they're like, he got crushed by the tank.
He did not get crushed
He
by
did
the
not
tank.
get crushed by the tank, but it's a pop culture idea. So it's like, you don't need to have a coherent story or a compelling case. You just need to have a pop culture moment that sticks in people's heads. And Kony 2012 stuck in people's heads.
Yeah, but that was really, that was one of those like radio hits that just gets jammed down your throat in the second it's off air. Everyone forgets about it.
I do feel like most people, if you're like, do you remember Kony 2012? They're like, oh yeah, something, but what was it? I feel like people don't remember. And if you're so young, you missed it maybe, and you're listening, it was everywhere for like 2 months.
No, I mean, this was
everywhere.
This was
in 2012.
I think also a moment in which just like shit, like pop culture, like decided to do like they did a We Are the World Africa thing again, where it was like everything was Africa for like a year.
Yeah, 2012.
And then people were like, I think we're done with Africa.
Right. It's a pop culture moment, not a serious concern.
And then like the actual people living in Africa were presumably like, on the one hand, we're glad that they're not making shitty documentaries about us.
Right. But on the other hand, you're still destroying Africa.
You're still fucking up Africa.
Right. And that's the thing. The United States is going in there and just fucking up everything we touch in the name of business interests. Okay. So at this point, we're around 2 hours in, and we're only up to 2017.
Okay, so
So it's going to be a two-parter, I think, is what we're going to do here. We'll finish with 2017. We'll have a little discussion at the end of next week's episode. Yeah, you guys know you can leave comments if you're listening on Spotify. If you have episode ideas you want us to tackle for the rest of the year, please let us know. I would love to do some episodes that you guys like.
Oh, yeah. Also, remember back when you asked me to start doing this more regularly, it was like right around Pride.
Yeah.
And you were like, we should do rainbow capitalism.
Oh, that would be a good one coming up next month.
Yeah, I still think we should do rainbow capitalism.
Would be good. Yeah. And that could tie in with like military stuff too, because it's also used as justification for some military bombing campaigns and things like that. Northrop Grumman at Pride.
Put them back in the closet. Really don't ask, don't tell.
That's David's hot take.
This is I've like my jokes off so much, but this.
Okay, all right. That's the episode this week. If you're not over on our Patreon, check us out there. It's patreon.com/pickmeup. I'm scared. For $3 a month, you can access bonus episode content, including the double, potentially triple agent episode series that we mentioned earlier about the MI6, MI5.
MI6.
MI6, the British spy.
Oh, but that's
USSR.
That's where Guy Burgess said that he had to drive a car because if he were forced to take public transportation, he'd feel obliged to seduce the bus driver.
Exactly.
Also,
real interesting little three-parter.
Everyone said he was really hot and fucked good, but smelled bad.
You know, that's the life I'm trying to live. All right, that's it. That's the episode.